Hi, welcome to this tutorial on the Patient Admission Prediction Tool. My name is Justin Boyle from CSIRO. I'm going to talk about some of the features and the use of this software to support decision making for bed management. So first issue is how to access. Point your browser to the current URL, which as of June 2011, 10.21.48.22:8080. I like to run things in full screen, push F11, and you're presented with a welcome page. And so to obtain access, this is through the Health Access Improvement Service, contact number there. One of the things to note is that in all these predictions, the routine admissions, so the rehabilitation, renal dialysis and chemotherapies are excluded based on some DRG codes. And if we log on, that's usually just email address. And we're presented with a page that has predictions for a default facility. So if a user has a number of facilities that they'd like to see predictions for, these are usually available in a drop-down box, and it's possible to change the default one that comes up first through this edit user page here. So we've got a number of menu items on the left, different aspects of this software. Really we see predictions mainly for the current day and the next day. It's possible to change that. It's a bit like an airline booking system through up to 10 years in advance of any calendar date. And these predictions are presented with 95% prediction intervals. So it's like a worst and best case scenario that's just derived from the data. In some cases, these estimates are quite tight or narrow prediction intervals representing higher certainty. Other days they're wider. And we draw information from two systems, the Hibiscus hospital-based corporate information system. So these are these first 5 values here. And then also EDIS, Emergency Department Information Systems. And they're separate information systems, and we provide estimates from both. So they don't always match. So here, firstly, all patients expected to be admitted in this facility on this day, those that are just elective, same day separations, and then those according to Hibiscus are coming from ED and the discharges. So those coming from this value doesn't quite match those according to EDIS. So EDIS ones are coded through a discharge destination field of admitted to Department of Emergency Medicine, ED or observation ward. If we look at a dashboard for inpatient projections, we can see patient flow in a bit more detail. So these red columns here represent patients admitted or discharged in 4-hourly blocks. So the horizontal axis is 4-hourly blocks across the day. Values are above the line represent patients coming in, values below patients discharged. If we look over on the right, then we can look at that on an hourly basis, and the black line shows where we are at the current time. And also we can see this shaded area either side of this prediction. That's the 95% prediction interval, and again, some times of the day it's a lot more predictable than others. Scrolling down, we can look at the type of patients. So this pie chart here is based on admission unit, and it's unique to that facility. So these admission units, they're coded in terms of standardized admission unit mapping, and in this particular example, these are cardiac, orthopedic, general surgery, general medicine, obstetric, and emergency. And that will be unique and will change depending on the facility. It's the top 6 because there are quite a lot of admission units. And then a 7-day forecast for admissions and discharges. We're coming up to a weekend. So that's the inpatient page. The dashboard for the ED, similar information but for all presentations. So there are about 180 presentations expected at this facility through the ED, and again about 50 of those are expected to be admitted. So again, this is from EDIS. We have presentations across the day, a breakdown of urgency. So this is Australasian triage scale, where category 1's the most urgent, and 7-day forecasts. Then looking at a 10-day outlook report. So this provides the next 10 days information about what's coming in, what's coming out of the hospital. The first 3 rows contain patients that are not mutually exclusive between groups, so there's some patients in each of these. So it's not appropriate to some, but these are hibiscus fields coming from the ED, elective, and same-day separations. And then after this little gap, these bottom 2 rows represent that information shown on that summary page, a summary of what's coming in that day versus what's coming out. Some days there'll be more admissions than discharges, which represents a worst case, hence the colour of red. Some days are worse than others. This information here every day, some days it's positive, some days it's negative, but we believe that information can assist in working out appropriate response to demand-supply mismatch. So if we're going to look ahead, I can say, for example, look in the December week at this particular facility and see how that is across that period. And again, looking at that for different hospitals. I'm now going to show you how that longer term view of that information can be useful. So here at this facility, I'm going to put in a forecast horizon. I'm going to start at the beginning of June for a whole year, so I can enter in any start date. We're limiting the forecast horizon to a year, and I want the patient flow. So that's just what's coming in, what's coming out, and just a graph at the moment. So this provides that this particular code, the planning smooth patient flow, is what was seen in that bottom line on the 10-day report, and we can see how that varies across a year. So here we see this little red line is the patient flow. So some days there are more patients being admitted overall in the day, and other days there are more patients discharged, and so we have the sawtooth type profile. And in typical at this particular facility, these peaks generally occur on a Sunday, as there are little discharges happening on that day. But because that's quite a noisy signal, if we just put a smooth function through that, so this blue line represents a 7-day moving average. So just an average of the preceding 7 days, we can smooth that out and get an idea of overall cases of patients moving into the hospital. So here across July into August, it's probably busy winter period. September quietening down a bit over Christmas, and we can see maybe generally net movement out of the hospital. But at the end of January, a large peak perhaps associated with a public holiday. Again, Easter next year, potentially quieter. And again, the 95% prediction interval. So this is how it can be used long term for a bit of planning. So if I just go back to that screen, here we can see all the other things that we can provide forecasts for on a custom basis. So we've got all the ED presentations. We also provide a breakdown of patients presenting with influenza-like symptoms. So this is based on a grouping of ICD-10 diagnosis fields, influenza, pneumonia, and a few others. We also look at, according to EDIS, what's admitted. Then there's all the hibiscus information. So we've got all the main groupings in hibiscus, and then specifically little individual admission units. Again, how much for each of these, how much is elective, how much is emergency. And so one of the useful features of this is I could export this information as text for a particular facility and then input that into another application. So if I just choose text, then using the browser, I then just can save that as a text file, call it a unique name that represents the facility, and it was and then in Excel I can open up that text file I just created as a delimited file. It's comma separated values, and it puts those values in the respective columns. So in this way I can look at planning long term. So that concludes this tutorial. We'd like to acknowledge the support of the Centre for Healthcare Improvement, CHI, and also Queensland Emergency Medicine Research Foundation, who provided some funding. Thank you for your time.